Okay, so I talked about wanting to show you how to take notes in the morning, and I'm not sure I did a really good job, so I took notes afterwards. One of the important things we need to talk about is the project structure. We talked about that a little bit in terms of absolute and relative paths this morning, but the important thing I wanted to say here is that we're going to break our Python Flask app up into multiple files. So here we've got app.py, which is our basic runs everything. We're using app.py because that's the default name. Models.py holds our SQL Alchemy stuff, and then forms.py, which I didn't realize was off the camera, can hold all our WT forms material. Slash templates holds our HTML files, and slash instance will be where the database file goes. So for the imports in app.py, there's a lot. The first thing is we're going to take all the pieces we're going to take from Flask. Now, we talked about that capital F Flask is that robot kit. It's the software object that we're going to use and we're going to name app. And all of the other orange pieces there are other functions we can pull out of the Flask library. I write some down here. There's a lot. You're going to read a lot of them and you're going to find a lot of them. It's fine. We use these URL for request, redirect, and JSONify a lot, but there's dozens. Now, for here, I'm going to import things from my own forms and models.py file. So these are the things that I'm going to make in those files, and I'm going to bring them in to the app.py so I can use them in the main software robot. Once we've created our particular software robot that we're calling app, using that constructor, Flask __ name, now we can use app.config to write specific values like the location of our particular database file, or that SQL can be track notifications, or what the secret key is. And there's a bunch of things. Every time we add new elements to our robot, we'll probably have to configure something, often with an app.config. Then db.initApp, that's the point where we're going to take our software robot that is the database and feed our software robot that is the Flask app as input to it. And that's going to be the thing that makes the connections between those two. In forms.py, we have three different categories of imports. We've got the class Flask form, which is the big software object that makes HTML forms. From the WT forms library, we're going to import string field, radio field, and any other HTML form elements. And then from wtforms.validators, we're always going to use data required, but there's a dozen other sorts of validators. There's the email, is it a certain length, does it equal a certain value? Remember, validators are a way we're checking the input against a particular defined rule. So we're not going to go check to see if it matches what's in the database, but there's got to be some way that we can describe, is it an IP address is something that you can check even without finding whether it's a valid IP address, just whether it's in that structure. And then in forms.py, this is, even if we have multiple forms, they're all going to look like this. It's going to be class, then form name, helps to have that be capitalized, and the input means the type is going to be Flask form. That's the robot that we brought in earlier. And then for every field, like we have for student name as an example, we're going to have a field name, then we're going to have the constructor is going to be whichever type of field that is. It's string field, radio field, any of those ones we imported back there. Then we have a bit of text that is our label text, and then we have validators equal, and that will be a list, a Python list, meaning with square brackets, of the particular validators we're going to reply. Now we're going to move to models.py. This is where we're going to store all of our SQL Alchemy stuff. And so you can see up here, we don't really import much. We just get the SQL Alchemy robot, and then we make a new one. Boom, database, db equals SQL Alchemy. So now we've got a software robot that's going to be our door into anytime we have to talk to the SQL server, the SQLite server that runs on our computer. That's the server that's going to handle all of the actual saving to disk, so we don't have to do any of that stuff. But once we've created the database object, we now actually have to create the tables that are going to be stored in there. So although these are same sort of structure, class, then the name of the table, and then parentheses, what type of object is this? This is going to be the model type from our database, db.model. The __ table name is the kind of like internal name of that table. And then we go through and you have to make a bit for every column or every field that's going to go into this particular table. They all are going to have db.column,